So let's begin by davening that the zchut of our learning should help to bring home the rest of the hostages and protect our soldiers, Am Yisrael, and all of the innocents, and bring an end finally to this war.
Amen.
And with that, we'll begin. So, just Paul, just so you know, I told Michael, I think tonight I'm going to see it's 7:40. I'm going to probably do this probably for less than an hour just because I'm not feeling 100%, but I did want to keep some continuity. So what I want to do tonight, I want to go back and look a little more closely at what we started last week. Um, and I want you to, going to try to have you be more participatory, but we'll see how that goes. So the Mishnah says, "Achal ochlin she'en ru'uyin la'achila." So if you ate food that was not fit for eating on Yom Kippur, then the din is that you're patur. Okay. Amar Rava, so Rava says, kas pilpile biyomid kippure patur. If you chewed on peppers on Yom Kippur, then you're exempt. If you kas tzangvila biyomid kippure patur. Similarly, if you chewed on ginger on Yom Kippur, you're patur. So I think I mentioned last week that this sugya and the Braita and the next part of the sugya appears also in Masechet Brachot. But the other place that part of it appears is in Masechet Sukkah. And I want to show you that. But what we're going to do first is I'm going to read through this a little bit more. Does anybody know why this appears in Masechet Sukkah? All right, let's go a little bit further and we'll see. So this is Rava's contention.
Can
If
I
you
can I
chew
guess
on,
that
yeah, go ahead.
maybe if you need to eat it in the sukkah?
Good guess, but no. Um, so hi, Michael Werner. We're really just starting. So Rava says if you chew on pepper. So last time also I told you I had to really think about what kind of pepper, and I'm pretty sure it's the pepper plant from which we derive black pepper. And you'll see uh, one of the reasons I want to show you the sugya and sukkah is because it's related to that question. Um, all right, so if you chew on peppers on Yom Kippur, you're patur. If you chew on ginger on Yom Kippur, you're patur. This is what Rava says. Rashi comments, Kas pilpilin, ein ze yishuv hadat, shein ze derech achilato. So this is not Yishuv Hadat. What is not Yishuv Hadat? What is Rashi explaining?
Chewing on something harif, like pepper or like black pepper or ginger.
Why do you say something harif? Because it's pepper and ginger?
Yes.
Okay, don't add anything into you may be correct, but don't add anything into what you don't see in Rashi. What
Okay,
is
fair enough.
Rashi himself saying?
Chewing on black pepper and ginger on Yom Kippur does not give Yishuv Hadas.
And why not? What does Rashi say?
Oh dear.
Actually, it's French, not in Hungarian.
Again, Rashi says, "Ein ze yishuv hadat, shein ze derech achilato."
Oh, right. Okay. So this is not how one usually eats them.
Right. This is not the way that you consume these foodstuffs, right? This is not the way you eat them. And so, so what Rava says seems to fit into the category that's established in the Mishnah of ochlin sheinan ru'uyin lachila. So we don't eat ginger, we don't eat pepper, we don't, and this term kas, right, is chewing. We had it earlier Um, just a second. I'm back to phone. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit out of it as I explained to Michael Schwartz. But okay, we'll go with what we said. So this is, you chew on these things. This is not the way you eat them. It's not the way you
Has the word to do with the Lixos Tziponaim? Or I don't know, maybe is that kuf or kaf? I don't remember.
Uh, what the kas?
The word kas.
Yeah, it's like koses.
Is it like the same word? Koses?
Y-
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But that's also with the, it's also with the kaf.
Awesome.
Asas.
Okay.
Okay, so in any event, so this is Rava's contention. Then the Gemara says meitive. What does meitive mean?
It's an objection. He objects to that.
Okay, so meitive is going to introduce. So literally, meitive means heshivu, right? Which they replied, meaning that they're going to, or he replied, meaning that the Gemara is going to bring a kasha. It's almost always going to be a kasha from a Braita, right? So Rava is an Amora, and if we find a Braita that disagrees with him, so then that will constitute a kasha on Rava, because Rava, as an Amora, can't disagree with a Braita unless he brings another Tannaitic source to support himself. So, what does the Braita say? Haya Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir said, "Imashma shene'amar va'araltem orlato et piryo." Right, we looked at this pasuk last time. That if you distance, you have to distance yourself from the fruit. Eini yodea she'etz ma'achalhu. Don't I know that it's talking about a tree? What's an eitz ma'achal?
It's a fruit tree, although we discussed that it may not be the case last week.
Right. Okay. But the simple understanding of eitz ma'achal would be a tree that produces food. So that would be a fruit tree. So what is I'm having a problem switching to my browser. So just hang on with me for a second. I don't have time to restart my computer now. But this is the pasuk. I have it down here in the footnote. This is the introduction to the din of Orla in the Torah, Vayikra. The Chitavo el haaretz. When you come to the land, tatem kol eitz machal, and you plant any, and we'll just translate it out, fruit tree, but any eitz machal, va'araltem orlato et pirio. Right, and you will distance from its fruit. Then what's the din? Shalosh shanim yelachem arilim lo yeachel. So for 3 years you have to consider it orly, and it's distanced. The Targum's understanding it shall not be eaten. Okay, so a fruit tree from the time it is planted for the next 3 years, and how we count the years, if you remember, that goes back to Rosh Hashanah. That's why Rosh Hashanah Lehilanot is an important date in the calendar, because it's going to be how you count the years based on Tu B'Shvat. Um, so you can't eat it during that time. So what is Rebbe Meir's problem? What does he ask? He says, since it says Aral Tem Aratot Piryo, Eini Yodeh She'etz Ma'achalhu, don't I know from that this is a tree that produces food? What's his question?
Hmm.
The Etz Me'achel is superfluous because it already says Perov.
Right. So let's make that into full sentences. Araltem aralato et piryo. So since the Torah says araltem et aralato et piryo, so from that part of the pasuk, don't I know that this is an eitz ma'achal? How do I know that it's an eitz ma'achal? Because it says piryo. Ela ma Talmud lomar eitz ma'achal. So why does the pasuk add in the words eitz ma'achal? Now there, as you said, now those words are superfluous. I don't need the Torah to tell me this is an eitz ma'achal. It already told me that it has fruit. When I say already, it's not in terms of the order of the pasuk because eitz ma'achal precedes it, but we'll see why he picks on eitz ma'achal as being. In other words, one or the other part of the pasuk is superfluous. So he's going to pick on eitz ma'achal as being superfluous. Ela ma Talmud lomar eitz ma'achal. Eitz shetam eitzo ufiryo shaveh. It's a tree whose wood and fruit are the same, that they have the same taste. Yomer zepil pilin. So then we would say, so what kind of tree produces fruit that tastes like its wood? I would say that's referring to pepper. Okay, so how does he understand the words eitz ma'achal? Not a tree that produces food, but rather what?
But you can eat that. You can eat the etz itself.
Yeah, that the eitz is eitz ma'achal. It's a tree that produces wood that has the taste of the fruit. So it's as if you could eat the wood itself. So based on that, Joshua Rabbi Meir says, so then what would fit into that category? So pepper fits into that category. And it also teaches us, "Ve'ein Eretz Yisrael chasera klum," the land of Israel is not missing anything. Shneimar lo techsar kol ba. The second part, which is interesting, I want to leave it aside for the moment because it's not immediately important. But the main thing is that he understands that pilpilin are fruit. For what purpose do I consider them to be fruit?
For Orla.
For orla. In other words, he's going to come now based on this drasha to say that a pepper plant has the din of orla. Once you plant the pepper plant, even if it produces fruit the first year or the second year, you can't eat that fruit, right? Up through the third year, you can't eat it. And then the fourth year, it's not a ravine. You can eat it like you eat maser sheni, but that's a separate thing. So, and we'll look at that a little bit more. But at this moment, so what's the kasha on Rava? So this Braita was brought because it's a kasha on Rava. So what's difficult now in this Braita for Rava?
The Braita of Rabbi Meir is saying that peppers, at least, really are food because it's subject to Orla. And Rav is saying that it's not food. You're patur on Yom Kippur.
That seems to be the kasha. In other words, according to Rava, what did we say? Rava said kas pilpile or kas angvila b'yom kippura. That comes under this category of ochin she'en ru'uyin la'achila. These are foods that are not fit to eat. But now I have a braita that says that the pepper plant has a din of orla. It would only have a din of orla if it produces edible fruit. So this is a problem for Rava. How is he going to answer it? So Gemara answers for Rava, lo kasha, haberativta, v'habiyabeshta. This is talking about moist, and this is talking about dry. So what does that mean?
So Rava's response is that if the pepper and presumably also the ginger is wet, then it is fit to eat. Whereas if it's dry, it's really not considered food.
Right. Okay. And now, okay, let's just look at these two short Rashis, three short Rashis. Meitive, right? So this is the introduction to the kasha from the Braita. Meitive b'chule alma ma'achal karile. I learned from the Braita that pilpelin are called food. So that's the meitive. That's the main kasha. And Avi Omer is the pilpelin. L'lamedcha shepilpelin chayivin ba'orla. Rashi says min ilanhu. It's a type of tree, right? Only trees are chayav ba'orla. And the pepper tree, because Rashi says in his Perushon in Brachot, because the tree grows, it grows more like, it looks like a bush. It grows close to the ground. So you might think not to categorize it as a tree for the purposes of Orla. But based on the drasha, Rabbi Meir says, no, it's going to be categorized as a tree. And then the Gemara answers for Rava, lo kasha haberu tifta. Rashi says, chazi lemachal. It is fit for eating. Ra'ui lemachal. It's fit for eating. So if it's moist, in other words, if it's not yet dried pepper, then it's fit for eating. So now at this point in the Gemara, what halachot have I learned? First, what halachot did I learn regarding Yom Kippur? Because that's our main interest. What did I learn about Yom Kippur?
That one is that one that if one chews on dried pepper or dried ginger, then one is patur, because that is not the usual way of eating them.
Okay, so that's what, right. If you chew them on Yom Kippur, then you're patur. Then you're patur from eating. That would be a patur for the isur of eating on Yom Kippur. And again, just because Paul brought this up last time, this does not mean you're allowed to do it. Patur implies patur aval asur. You're exempt from punishment from the Torah, but you're not allowed to do it. We'll look at the halacha and the Shulchan Aruch later. Okay, and what's the other halacha that I learned? Oh, I'm sorry. Before I finish with you, Michael Werner, if you chew pilpelin or zangvila, in what state? What's their state?
Right.
Say it again.
If you chew them if you chew them in their dry state.
Very good. Right. So on Yom Kippur, if you chew them when they're dry, you will be patur. And then the implication is if you chew them when they're still moist, you would be chayav. Of course, you would have to eat a shiur to be chayav punishment, but according to what we learned earlier in the chapter, that we hold like Rabbi Yochanan says, "Chatzi shiur is asur min Torah." You would not. It would be patur val asur midioraita. All right, that's a secondary issue. Okay, so that's one thing we learned. What's the other thing we learned? What's the other halacha that we learned that's not immediately pertinent to Yom Kippur?
That fresh ginger and pepper in their fresh, i.e., moist state, is subject to orla.
Well, do we need them to be, in other words, do we need them to be in their first state? That seems to be implied
Okay, so
because it
any
says
state.
Haberativta Vahabia Beshta.
So yeah,
But
actually conceivably it could be any state, I suppose.
right, in other words, the point of the Braita is to say that the pepper tree is something that produces fruit. So I don't know. I'm not enough of a pepper farmer, but presumably, even if the fruit would dry on the tree, it would still be chayav in orla. Okay. All right. So far, so good. Let's take a look for a moment. I want to show you. I was going to do the Gemara in Brachot, but because of my altered state, I want to show you this in Sukkah. So in Sukkah, we have a Mishnah. Mishnah says, Etrog hagazul v'hayavesh pasul. So this is the Gemara in Sukkah, Daf Lamed Dalet Amud Bet, toward the bottom. Oh, wait, I also, before I forget, I wanted to show you one other thing. I will tell you, as I was learning this a few weeks ago, of course, this Gemara in Sukkah immediately came to mind. But first of all, I'm not so bucky in Shas, and a lot of times I don't know other places where things appear. And maybe we've discussed this before, but I want you all to be aware when you're looking at the at the Daf Gemara in a regular standard printing of the Gemara. The Gemara includes several important cross references. So we're down here. So then Amar Rava Kas Pilpile. So you notice the asterisk here. So that will take you, hold on 1 second. That will take you to the margin. Depending on the layout of any given page, that the reference could end up on the left margin or the right margin. And sometimes it gets stuffed in between here. It just depends on the layout of the page. But you see on the top left here, this far left column is the Masorah Tashas. And it's imitative of the Masoret on Tanakh. So what's the Masoret on Tanakh? Oh, I'm sorry, emergency vehicles are going by. So the Masoret on Tanakh, what is the Masoret on Tanakh? It's long and complicated, but the brief understanding of the Masoret, and this is the basis for what we call the Masoretic text. When we talk about the Masoretic text, it means it's a text that had built in a system of checking in order to maintain the integrity of the text, right? Because texts get copied by Sofrim, and we know that Sofrim are not reliable. And I can tell you that as a Sofer. So there were different ways that were built in to help maintain the integrity of the text. And I'm pretty sure we've talked about this, that we say that the term Sofer comes from what root?
Mispar, or like counting, number.
Counting. And that's from there we get mispar, right? Mispar is to count. We get the word mispar, and we get other related words. So Sofrim were counters. And what were they counting? They were counting different things about the text. They were counting, let's say, the number of words in a given text, like how many words are there in the Torah, how many words are there in Sefer Breshit, and so forth. And they were also counting the number of instances of particular words. So every word, some words appear literally only once in all of Tanakh, but most words appear a lot of times. So they would count the number of times that every word appears. And in the expanded Masorah, the Masorah Rabbah, which is almost never printed now in the backs of your Chumashim, but you could take any given word and it would list all the different places that word appears. So similarly, the Masoret Hashas, one of the most brilliant cross references that was ever created for learning Gemara, he will take sugyot that appear more than once in Shas. He will tell you where they appear. So this is an extremely important cross-reference, especially for those of us. This is an extremely important reference, especially for those of us who don't know Shas by heart. So, we earlier, a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, this was earlier on the top of the page, we had this Braita, Chedetanya v'initem et nafshatechem b'tisha l'chodesh, so forth. So you see there's an asterisk here, and I go over to the Masorah Shas. It says this drasha is going to appear, this Braita is going to appear in Resh Rosh Hashanah, Daf Tet, and because it only has one period after it, it means Daf Tet Amud Aleph. If it has a colon after it, it means Amud Bet. Are you all familiar with that distinction? Okay. So now when I look here at our sugya, Amarava Kaspil Pile, so it refers me immediately to Brachot Daf Lamed Vav Amud Bet, which if we were to take the time to learn that sugya a little bit better, we'd understand that that's probably you see it, it's part of a longer sugya that's more pertinent to brachot. So why would this issue of kas pilpile, why would that be pertinent to Masechet Brachot?
Well, you need to know what bracha to make on it, if at all.
Exactly. So it's in that context that this sugya appears in brachot. There's certain things that you don't make a bracha on, like food that's not fit for eating. You don't make a bracha on it. And food here is it's a term used very loosely. In other words, something that you eat that isn't really food. So if you start chewing on wood, then, even if you break it down enough to swallow it, you don't say a bracha on that because it's not food that's fit for eating. So that's one reference we see. And then we see this Braita, Meitive Haya Rebbe Meir Omer. Then it says that's Sham. That's like Ibid that we have right? So it's there. In other words, you'll find this line in the same reference as the previous reference. But you'll also find it in Sukkah Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. And then in brackets, he says, Ayen Sham, Uberashi Sham, B'tzarich Look there, and look at Rashi there. And this needs further study. So we may or may not go into all of that, but let's take a look at so that I wanted to emphasize this. So just, when we were learning in yeshiva, the Shir Rebbe told us that when we prepared for Shir, we had to prepare not only the sugya that we were doing, we were supposed to look up all of the other instances where that appeared in Shas to understand the different contexts that it appears. The other reason that you may do this, even if you're not going to delve into it deeply, is you'll, as is alluded to by the comment of the Masorah Shas, you will see Rashi's Perush in these other places, and sometimes it's more expanded, so it's more helpful, and sometimes it's difficult and it seems to raise problems the way Rashi explains it one place as opposed to another place. There's another important cross reference that was done later. Masorah Shas was done. I think I think it was in the early 17th century. In other words, Masorah Shas was one of these things that came about really as a direct result of printing. And this started, I think it was created in the early 17th century, not long after printing came into being, like within the first 50 to 100 years of printing. While we're on the subject of cross references, we also have the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah. Are you familiar with this? Did we ever discuss this? Okay, Michael Schwartz, you're nodding your head. So what do I see in the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah?
It's a reference to both the Rambam as well as the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah as well.
Yes, and also actually the Smag, the Sefer Mitzvot Gadol,
Yes,
which
yes.
we don't jump to as a primary reference, but it appears. So in the standard Vilna edition, you'll see it with little the little letters, the small letters. There's small regular block letters, not Rashi letters. That will refer you to the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah. So here we said, hold on a second. Well, this is one we did earlier. Matchil, Yachol Mishatech Shav Talmud B'Tisha, HaKetzad Matchil Mitanemi Bod Yom. Right, so this is the right up there that says that we learn from the pasuk V'initem et nafshotechem b'tisha l'chodesh, etc. You learn from that we begin and fast from while it's still day. So if you want to know how the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch paskins on that, then you see the little aleph here, and you go up here, and you see there's a little aleph here, and then that's going to tell you where to look in the Rambam and in the Smag and in the Tur Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Siman Taf Reish Sif Aleph, etc. Okay, and then the other cross reference we have is the Torah Or. The Torah Or is usually in the standard edition is printed in this inside margin between the text of the Gemara and Rashi or Tosfot, and the Torah Or is whenever the Gemara quotes a pasuk from Tanakh, the Torah Or will tell you the book and the chapter where that appears. In more recent editions, they will also tell you the verse, so you don't have to search through the chapter to find the verse. And in a lot of those editions, not only will they tell you that, but on the side, they will actually do what I do in my footnotes. They'll print the whole pasuk. So anyway, those are the most important things. And then I started to say there's another cross-reference which is not on the daf, even in the newer versions, which is really too bad. But there's another one that if you have a standard full edition of the Vilna Shas, after the Gemara, broadly speaking, after the Gemara you have the Rosh, and then you have the Marsha, and you have a bunch of other Mefarshim, Achronim that appear after that. usually at the very end of all of those, you have something that's called the Yefei Einayim. And the Yefei Einayim are cross references from the Gemara, from the Bavli. It will tell you where parallel sugyot appear in the Yerushalmi, which is also very helpful, and also midrashim. Usually the midrash, it will tell you where in the midrashay halacha, but also sometimes in the midrashay agadat. It's also very, very important cross reference. Okay, that's a little Gemara lesson, a little methodology lesson. But with that, let's take a look for a moment at the Gemara and Sukkah, which I have here. So the Mishnah in Sukkah here says, Etroga gazul vayavesh pasul. Right, so if you've learned, this is the third chapter, Lulav Gazul. It talks about each of the Arba Minim and things that can make them pasul. So an etrog that is stolen or that's dry is pasul. Shel ashera v'shel nidachat pasul. If it's an etrog comes from an ashera, what's an ashera?
A tree that was used for idol worship.
Very good. So somebody, well, we won't get into the circumstances, but let's just say what you said. We'll keep it simple. If the etrog tree was used for idol worship, then the etrogim that come from it are pasul. The shel ir hanidachat. What's in ir hanidachat? Which we read about not too long ago in the parsha.
It's a city in which they've turned to idol worship.
And what's the din of an ir hanidachat?
The city should be destroyed.
Right. So you destroy the city and everything in it. Right. So the reasons for etroga gazul vayavesh for them being pasul, we'll leave that aside. The reason that an etrog that comes from an asherah or ir hanidachat is pasul. Do you know why those things are pasul?
They would have been used for idol worship, so you can't get benefit from them.
So you would think. But there's actually a more basic reason. The more basic reason is that once something was used for idol worship, either as an asherah or if it was an ir hanidachat, then at that moment it becomes, the din of it is that it has to be destroyed. So even if it's not destroyed, we look at it as if it's destroyed. So it means there's no shear. The etrog in these categories has no shiur, so you can't use it for that reason. And then it goes in shel orla, pasul, shel trumat tameya, shel trumat pasul, shel trumat torah, lo yitol, etc. Let's go to the Gemara here. Tanu Rabbanan. The Gemara here actually is going to deal first of all with how do we know that the Torah wants us to use an etrog. The Torah never uses the word etrog. How do we know that that's what the Torah means? So, Tanu Rabbanan, rabbis learn in a Braita, pre-Eitz Hadar, right? So that's from the Pasuk. Yeah? You have to take a pre-Eitz Hadar, the fruit of a beautiful tree. Eitz, shetam eitzo ufiryo shaveh. It's a tree whose the taste of its wood and its fruit are the same. So now you see how it's right. So the Gemara says, "Havi." All right. So eitz shetam eitzo ufiryo shaveh haviyomer ze etrog. So we'll say pre-Tzadar, it must mean an etrog, because what tree produces fruit that tastes like it's like the tree itself? That must be an etrog. So then what does the Gemara ask? The ema pil pelin. Why didn't I say that it's pepper? Keditanya. What would make me think that it would be pepper? Keditanya, because I learned in the Braita. It's the Braita we just learned of Rabbi Meir. היה רבי מאיר אומר, ממשהו שנאמר, נתתם כל עץ, איני יודע שהוא עץ מאכל. So here he brings it from a different part of the pasuk. It's a different version. Our pasuk, the way in our Gemara, he brings it from where the Torah says, "Va'araltem or lato et piryo." Here he says, I'm going to learn it from here, unitatem. Unitatem kol eitz. You're going to plant any tree. Before I get to the word machal, once it says you're going to plant any tree, Eini yodea shu eitz machal. Don't I know already that it's talking about an eitz machal? Why would I think that? We'll come back to that in a second. Ma Talmud lamar eitz machal. Eitz shetam eitzo piryo shaveh. Havi omer ze pilpilin. למנחה שפלפלין חייבים באורלה ואין ארץ ישראל חסרה כלום, שנאמר לא תחסר כל בה. Okay, so the Gemara first brought a braita that says, how do I know that I need an etrog for the arba meaning dafka? All the Torah says is pre-Eitz Adar. So it says, okay, but I learn it like this. Pre-Eitz Adar tells me Eitz Shatam Eitzo Firyo Shaveh. And the mechanism of the drasha is similar to what we saw with Eitz Machal. It's pre-Eitz Adar. So the fruit and the tree are Hadar, right? They both have this aspect of Hadar. Haviyom is the etrog. But then I ask a kasha. Rabbi Meir says if I have a tree that the wood and the fruit taste the same, he says that should tell me it's pilpilin. And then what would be the din? That actually you would take a lulav and hadassim and aravot and pepper. That would be the fourth mean. So the Gemara says, Hata mishum delo efshar. So there, what is there referred to here? He says there because it's not possible. So what's there referring to? What's hatam? Okay, Michael Schwartz, it's up to you because the other people I think are down for the count.
It's referring to the pepper because the discussion is about the etrog, so the pepper is there. It's external.
Right. And we've had this before. So whenever the Gemara brings up two sources, hacha here is whatever we're discussing here immediately. Hatam is the source that's brought from outside. So there, in the Braita that of Rabbi Meir, that's talking about pepper, mishum delo efshar, because it is not possible. What does it mean it's not possible? The Gemara goes on to explain. Avid, how will it be done? How will we do it? In kod chada lo minkara lekichata. If you take one, then the taking of it is not recognizable. So what is it? What does the Gemara mean? If you take one peppercorn, you can't see it. So it's too small. And this is, from here, would seem to be the proof that the pepper that Rabbi Meir is talking about is the plant that produces peppercorns. Because the full-grown fruit, of course, is bigger than the peppercorn, but not a lot bigger. Even if it's 2 or 3 times bigger, even if it's 4 times bigger, it's still only going to be like, that big. So when it says, I can't use Rabbi Meir to explain the pasuk of Priyat Sadar to be referring to pepper, because you can't take that. Like, the Torah wouldn't command such a thing, to take something you won't be able to recognize, you won't be able to see. And then the Gemara says, okay, Ninkot Treo Tata. So let's take two or three. So the Torah says pri. Pri is understood to be a singular. So you can only take one and not two or three. Hilkach lo efshar. So therefore, it's not possible. In other words, that's why I'm going to choose Rebbe Meir's. I'm going to choose the Stam Braita Priyei Tzadar to tell me that the Priyei Tzadar is the etrog, and I'm not going to use Rebbe Meir for telling me what I should use for the Priyei Tzadar. So the way Rashi learned the drasha, Rebbe Meir, so he says, "V'chitavo el haaretz natatem kol eitz." Right. So that's the only part of the pasuk that Rebbe Meir quotes, "Natatem kol eitz," and the Braita says, "Wouldn't I know from that it's talking about a tree that produces fruit?" So I saw Paul rolling his eyes a little bit, like, how would I know from that? Like, what's the implication from the Tatem Kol Eitz? Because that could refer also to tree that doesn't produce fruit. So Rashi explains, he learns it from this part of the pasuk in the Tatem Kol Eitz, and what it says at the end, Lo Yeachel. In other words, I know that ultimately the Isur of Orla is going to be that you're not allowed to eat that fruit. So I learned that from the words at the end of the pasuk, Lo Yeachel, right? Natatem kol eitz v'chava, natatem marto piyo, shalosh shnim yelachem arilim, Lo Yeachel. So Lo Yeachel refers back to what was said before. So I could say, once I said, I know, because it's going to end off by telling me that if I don't let three years pass, I can't eat it. So what will the it be? It's obviously going to be fruit, because the Torah is not going to be worried about you eating things that aren't food. Okay. So that's what Rashi says.
So a fruit which during the two first years is not considered as Bal Ma'achal or something.
No, it's not, because it's there during the first 3 years. For 3
First
years
3
you
years,
can't
yes,
eat.
yes.
Right, so for 3
I
years
know
you
that the
can't.
mitzvah you shouldn't eat it, but you can eat it. So
Right. No, but yeah,
you
I'm
have
glad
another
that
law,
you.
but it's edible.
Yes. So actually, so it's an important point. It doesn't mean that it's not something that you couldn't eat. You could eat it, but you're not allowed to eat it. In other words, an isur achila, just like basar nevela or basar b'chalav, or any number of other things that the Torah says you're not allowed to eat. So Rashi says, and it's written at the end of it, at the end of the pasuk, Lo yeachel, eini yodea de be'etz ma'achal mishta'ei kra. Don't I know from that the Torah pasuk is talking about mishta'ei? It's talking about an eitz ma'achal, because it says Lo yeachel. Chayivin ba'orla, right? So it teaches you that pilpilin are chayivin ba'orla, and Rashi says here, Rashi, he says a little more here than what we saw in Yoma, and I told you, let's just look at how Rashi says it. Delo tema min yereku. Don't say that the pepper that's produced is a kind of a vegetable. What's the difference between whether the pepper is going to be a vegetable or a fruit? What's the what are the halachic differences? Well, one of them is the one we're talking about.
It's
So,
every. Oh, no, go ahead.
my say it again.
I mean, if I recall, the halach definition of fruit is something that's produced by, I was going to say a tree, but I think any plant that produces a crop every year.
Okay, so we're not here to define that, but what I just asked for what halachic purpose do I need to know if something is a tree or something that is just producing vegetable, a
Orla.
tree that produces for orla.
Right.
Okay, so I'm saying that the one is just staring you in the face. If I say that the pilpilin is a min yerek, it's a type of a vegetable, then it wouldn't be chayav ba'orla, and you could eat the fruit of it. You could eat the vegetable that's produced. You could eat it right away. You don't have to wait till after the third year. Right? So Rash says. So what's the whole chiddush of Rebbe Meir? That pilpilin are chayavin ba'orla. The lotema min yereku. So don't say that it's a kind of vegetable. Why would I think that? Mimnei shehu eitz shafel kamin rotem. It's a low tree. In other words, it looks more like a bush, like a rotem. I can't remember how to say rotem in English. She'eno gavoa min
Shrub.
haaretz. It's not high off the ground. What did you say?
Shrub.
I'm not hearing you.
I think the word that you're groping for is shrub.
No. Rotem is a particular kind of shrub. But thank you. No, I mean it was a good guess. It's fine. In any event, in other words, when I look at a pepper tree, it doesn't have the tower of a tree. So, and yes, Michael Werner, it will actually get into that question about how I determine what a tree is altogether. But without going into all of that, we're just saying from here, I see Rebbe Meir says he's going to learn out that it's a tree for this purpose, the purpose of Orla, um, because of his drasha, because it's Tamei Tzo Fir Yosh Shaveh. And also because of, and it also then teaches you that the Eretz Yisrael is not missing anything, like it says elsewhere, Lo techsar kol ba, v'limencha, and it teaches you, Hai eitz ma'achal, the afilu pilpelin bichlal. And this is now going to teach you that the eitz ma'achal that's referred to in the din of Orla even includes pilpelin, which we understand I don't have a hard fast grasp on the point of this except to say I think that this extra part of Lotech Koba is to include pepper because of something that I don't know, one of you, maybe it was Michael Werner, mentioned early on, that yeah, it was you. You said they're harif. In other words, these are things that we use as spices. And so we might think that they're not going to be in this category. So it means that actually it's telling you that even the trees of Eretz Yisrael have all kinds of foods, all kinds of fruit, even peppers. Okay, that's the most that I can say about that right now. Okay, so this was kind of a sidebar, but it was also just to show you how this how this works in the Gemara with the cross references, even if you never learned the sugya before. But what you see from here is what I said before, that you're going to see, like here, this Braita of Rabbi Meir is now brought in a different context. And if you look at it in brachot, it's really brought in the context of whether or not you say a bracha on it. So each Gemara that I look at may give you more insight into those sources. And that's why it's worth looking at them. It's worth looking at them anyway, but in other words, it will enhance your understanding of the sugya you're learning. Sometimes it doesn't actually add, that it's just the same sugya that's brought down in another place because it happens to be pertinent there as is, and you don't really learn anything new. But usually you do. Okay.
How does the halakha consider that tomato, which is of course much later than
Right. Well, it doesn't appear. It doesn't appear in Europe until after the age of discovery, right? Until
yes,
people
of course,
start bringing it back from the New World.
But there is a halakha.
Yeah, halacha considers that to be a vegetable and not a fruit. So the halachic definitions of vegetable and fruit are not the same as botanical ones, because I'll give you a simpler example. If my ninth grade biology serves me well, every tree produces fruit. It's just not every tree produces fruit that's edible to humans, right? So you could argue, well, every tree is a fruit tree, but that's not in the halachic categorization. That's not the only thing that's relevant. It has to be a fruit that people eat. And then there are going to be other conditions that apply that will make it orla or not. So we're not going to go in. I'm not going to delve into that. It's a fascinating subject. I'm not going to delve into. Okay.
The tomatoes also grow on low bushes, so like the people.
So exactly.
Yes,
So go ahead. No, Michael Werner, what do you want to say?
But they don't produce fruit. They don't produce year after year.
And that seems to be one of the other Tanaim, but I'm going to leave it at that because it gets more complicated. So I'm going to leave it at that. Hold on. Because I'm very tired, I'm just going to do the next part, and then I'm going to retire for the night. Amarle Ravina Mereimar. Right, so Ravina said to Mereimar, Vaha Amar Rav Nachman, Hai Himlata Da'ati Mibei Hinduai Sharia. This Himlata that came from the place of Hindus is permitted. In other words, you're allowed to eat it. Mevarchinan alei borei pri adama. You're allowed to eat it, and the bracha that you say over it is borei pri adama. So Ravina answers, or the Mereimar answers, lo kasha. This is not a contradiction. Aberativta vahabiyabeshta. So this is talking about moist. This is talking about dry. So in order to understand this, we need to know what this himlata is, which we saw last week from Rashi. Rashi translates it first into Old French. And actually, this is interesting. If you look in the parallel sugyot, here it says litoriga, but in other ones, it's not exactly the same. And I thought I had my Rashi dictionary here. Just a second. I try to keep it close. I have two dictionaries for Rashi. one of them. Oh, here they are. I believe you can actually download this now from HebrewBooks.org. Otsar lo Azeh Rashi. But if you're looking online, Steinsaltz will tell you what it means. But this is a little bit more. It's a more scholarly work, and the way it has an index at the back. But the easy way to find things is it goes Masechet by Masechet. So we just turn to Masechet Yoma and to the daf that we're on, and we're on daf Pei Amud Bet. And it has the entry himlata, and here they have it not as litoriga, they have it as lituari, and I'll spell it in French. It's Letua with an accent, RIE. So I don't know if that's a word that you're familiar with. It's from Old French. And they translate that as daisa litrufa. It's some kind of not necessarily a cereal, but daisa, in other words, it's like a mixture that was used for medicinal purposes. And they say ha'asuyame asavim memutakim. It's made from sweetened grasses. So, without going into the different implications, but here Rashi understands to be, and we'll understand it from the context, it's sweetened ginger, right? Right, right. So he translate this is the translation of the Rashi between the two plus marks. Mashke samich metubal bitvash. It's a thick liquid that is spiced with that's spiced and that's in honey. And Rashi explains shemefat min basamim ktushim bitvash, that we fatten up, and that we spice with spices, with crushed spices mixed with honey. And apparently, it's one of the ways that apparently it could be made with different kinds of bisamim, but people made it with ginger. So it was something that people ate that according to Rashi, or sorry, at least according to the Otzar Lawazeh Rashi, it was something that was used medicinally. In any event, so we just concluded that on Yom Kippur, one is not allowed to chew. One will be chayav for chewing on moist ginger and moist peppers, but they will be patur for chewing on the dried versions of those things. So Ravina says, look, Rav Nachman said this himlata that comes from India is mutar. You're allowed to eat it. In other words, not about Yom Kippur, but in general, what it means, it's kosher. You're allowed to eat it. And you say the blessing of Borei Pri Adama. So your task between now and next week is to understand what the kasha is. And then the answer is going to be, because one is talking about Retifta and one is talking about Yabeshta. I'm going to just read through Rashi here. I'll explain Rashi very lightly, and then we'll do this sugya next week. So Rav Nachman says this himlata that comes from in Duai, Rashi says that's Eretz Kush, but we're going to go with the more plain understanding that it's a place where Hindus come from, which we call India, is permitted. What does it mean it's permitted? The ein bo mish, why would it not be permitted? So he says ein bo mishum bishulei nachrim. It doesn't have with it, in other words, it doesn't have an isur of bishulei nachrim, of food that was cooked by non-Jews. Why not? Shnechal kamot shehu chai, because you can eat it raw. That's going to be important for understanding the kasha. V'lo mishum giyulei nachrim, and it also is not asur for giyulei nachrim. Denotain tam lifgam. Giyulei nachrim would be if a non-Jew cooked something in a pot, let's say, and then you want to use that pot, you have to kosher it first. And if you don't, and you cook something in it, what is going to be absorbed from the pot is called giyulei nachrim. And why is it not asur mishum giyulei nachrim? Denotain tam lifgam, because it gives a bad taste. Amar ein bo mishum bishulei nachrim. Rashi now is going to explain the kasha. Since it says, since the Rav Nachman says that this himata, it doesn't have an isura bishulei nachrim, shma mina, it tells us derech achilato kishu chai. The way that one consumes it is when it's raw. So that's just the reading, and next week we'll tackle this. And those of you who can, try to make a reading in this Gemara. What is Ravina's kasha? What is he asking from Rav Nachman? And don't try to answer it now. That's it for tonight. Any last comments, questions? No. Okay. Have a good night.
All right,
See
good
you
night.
next week.
Refuah Shlema, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you, where are you now?
What do you think?
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's Jerusalem.
You're either, I can't tell if you're back in Israel, but or in a basement somewhere in the old country.
No. This is my office here in Jerusalem.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I just got back a few hours ago.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you. Okay. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.